Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man at your services. How are you all? Hope you're all doing very, very well. Now, looking a bit hazy, isn't it? A bit hazy fantasy. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe it's someone sprinkled some pixie dust. Although, given the subject matter of today's video, that won't last for too long, I wouldn't have thought. Things will turn dark and gloomy and glowering and overcast and doom-laden. If you've been keeping up with current Kilt-Man videos, there's been a bit of a trend going on. Vampires, Vampire, Nosferatu, been plenty of them. I've been talking about the last voyage of the Demeter. More on that to come. And I reviewed yesterday in a mammoth, huge Leviathan video, 1958's Hammer Spectacular, Dracula, with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, setting the whole Hammer Gothic ball rolling. Big success. Check out that video if you've got the longevity to do so and the endurance and stamina. It goes on for a wee bit. And weirdly enough, in the news at the moment, just to go alongside all this sort of stuff, there is vampires. I kid you not, vampires. Now, what it is, there's been an archaeological dig at a Polish graveyard. I'll give you all the names and the dates and all that kind of stuff and who's involved and what they found. But they've been working there for quite some time, and lately they found what they suspect to be the buried remains of a child, a female child, which was obviously suspected of being a vampire because it's padlocked to the, it's got a padlock around its foot, and it's one of several remains that they found in this particular site where they're all unusual burials. They're buried face down. They're buried with sickles across their throats, so that if they try to get up, their head will be lopped off within the grave. And they're buried with padlocks around themselves. And some have got discoloured mouths, like they've had stones and like precious gems put into their mouths. So it's all very strange, and it's all part of ritualistic burials from the Polish villages circa the 17th century. So I looked into it a bit more, and although the recent stuff is this young child, this young female child has been found, but this is just one of many bodies they found like this in this particular site. And if we go back to 2022, you've got the best one yet, which is I'm going to read it to you now. And you've seen in the thumbnail picture is the image of what they found. And it is the remains of a woman with a sickle lying across her throat. And it is there not to depict what she did in lifetime. Oh, she worked in the fields, scything wheat, barley, and whatever else. No. The way that's positioned, I'm looking at it right now, that would go right across her throat. So if she rose, at least that's what they believe. So let's read it. Now this came from, of all things, because I've done a fair bit of looking into this, and other magazines and other sort of sites have covered it. But the best one I found for the older story is from the Business Insider. Like, who's the CEO of the Business Insider? Is it Abraham Van Helsing himself? Or is it Vlad Tepes, Dracula himself? Who knows? But the headline is, and this is the older story, but it ties in with what they found only in the last few days. Archaeologists discovered a 17th century Polish vampire with a sickle across its neck, meant to prevent a return from the dead. I'm not making this shit up, this is true. A female vampire skeleton was found in a 17th century Polish graveyard. It was found restrained to prevent the dead woman from returning from the grave. The skeleton has a sickle laying across the throat and a padlock on its big toe. Now these padlocks, these are 17th century. This is Renaissance time. But they're still pretty, we're not talking medieval style, but it's pretty chunky. So, right, here we go. The skeletal remains of what may have been a female vampire vampire, were found in a 17th century Polish graveyard with a sickle across its neck to prevent the woman from rising from the dead. Professor Dariusz Poliński from Nicolaus Copernicus University headed up the archaeological dig that led to the discovery of the skeleton, the Daily Mail reported, but this is in the Business Insider. And there's all pictures of like the skeleton itself and measurements and stuff, you know, archaeological stuff, you know, scrapey tools and things like that. This is a quote. The sickle was not laid flat but placed on the neck in such a way that if the deceased had tried to get up, most likely the head would have been cut off or injured, Poliński told the Daily Mail. The remains discovered in the village of Pien near Ostromecko, Poland, appear to be that of a young woman buried in the 17th century, according to a press release seen by Insider. Traces of a silk cap on her head suggested she was from a higher social status. That comes from the Daily Mail. Such a discovery, especially here in Poland, is astonishing, especially now, centuries later, Poliński told CBS. Pure astonishment! A triangular padlock was placed around the big toe on her left foot and indicated that the people who buried the woman were concerned that she may rise from the grave, perhaps because they thought she was a vampire. The remains, which were discovered in August, this would be August 2022, are being further investigated by scientists. Researchers from the Institute of Archaeology at the University of Krakow will study DNA from the skeleton to learn more about the woman. There's a picture of the big padlock and all that. Vampire burial rituals that evolved over time. That's a little headline here. The practice of vampire burials spanned Christian Europe from as early as the 14th century all the way to the 17th century. Matteo Borini, principal lecturer of forensic anthropology at the Liverpool John Moore University, told Insider. The Liverpool John Moore University, by the way, is right behind you guys. It's 3 miles away. It's 3 miles behind your backs right now, across the River Mersey. But as the crow flies, or the vampire bat flies, it's just 3 miles away. I know plenty of people that work there, and a few that have studied there. It's a wonderful university. In fact, my son is studying there as well. I forgot about that. My son is actually studying there as well. Outbreaks of vampires were often associated with times when people were dying from causes that could not be explained with the science at the time, like a pandemic or a mass poisoning, he said. I'm going to talk more about this after I've read all this stuff. These vampires start to hunt and kill family members first, then the neighbours, and then all the other village. This is the classical pattern of a disease that is contagious. Yeah, that kind of makes sense, does it not? Borini discovered the remains of a woman in Venice who died in the 16th century, so this is a different one again, which he showed through careful scientific examination was a vampire burial site. The remains were found in a mass grave filled in with victims of plague. This body had a stone placed carefully in its mouth. The belief at the time was that people could become, and this is great, Nashras, which means vampires. Nashras? Nashers! Nashers! Nash, nash, nash! Isn't that great? This is their word for it. Nashras. Vampires that chewed through their shrouds and rose from the dead to bite the living and spread the plague around, he said. Later on, as the law evolved, people believed that vampires were rising from the dead and strangling people in the night. Borini said that this may be a way to explain the chest pain caused by the leading cause of death in Europe at the time, tuberculosis. It's a bit of a stretch, that, I think, really. But, you know, you can see how modern science is applying folklore and superstition and witness accounts to, oh, well, no, what you really saw and what people really felt was this. And I'm not saying it's wrong. But am I? It's only in Victorian times that vampires were said to bite the neck and suck the blood, a trope that was used in books at the time as a sort of metaphor for sex, said Borini. Well, we know that to be, that is fact, that is genuine fact. Bram Stoker and other people that wrote, Sheridan Le Fanu, that wrote about vampires during this particular period and slightly earlier, and certainly ever afterwards, would just take on this sort of, oh, we're going to bite the neck, we're going to drink blood. Stoker added the whole thing of like transforming into a wolf or a bat or a mist, bringing in the supernatural. And And it's stuff from lycanthropy and the werewolf folklore, superstitions, witchcraft and sorcery, ghosts and revenants. He brought the whole thing in to create Dracula and his version of the vampire mythology. And yeah, it definitely has been construed as a metaphor for sex, of course. Vampires don't have sex, did he? I know he had, what was it, True Blood, whatever it's called, and it was sex all the way. But the vampire, the culmination of its sexual release is the bite and the drinking of the blood. And even for their victim, it's an orgasmic process to go through, apparently. Right. A vampire or a common revenant. A revenant is a ghoul that comes back from the grave and hangs around cemeteries and tombs and mausoleums and will, chow down on dead people's bones. A ghoul. Dead people's bodies and whatever decomposing flesh there is, and might on occasion actually go and take on the living. A nasher, in other words. Barini said more researchers needed to confirm that this was a burial of someone suspected to be a vampire. Right. There were many superstitions surrounding death in Europe at that time, and not all of them had to do with vampires, he said. No, because werewolves were prevalent. Werewolves was probably bigger as a threat than vampires were. Bodies have been found locked into their final resting place, nailed to the bottom of the grave with stones weighing down their feet or with thorns of roses on their graves. Doesn't mention wolfbane or garlic then. Because again, this was all added afterwards to the legends. These were all ways to keep the body from rising up that didn't necessarily have to do with vampirism, he said. This thing about the sickle. The sickle could be in something completely different. For instance, a 2015 paper looking at remains buried in Poland with sickles around various parts of the body reviewed cases in which historians suggested that the tools used in agriculture could be a sign of social status. None of it's gone around the throat. I don't believe that. If you're buried with the tools of your trade, I can understand that. You're a blacksmith, you forged swords, you'll be buried with the tools of your trade. I can understand that and see the not revenance, that's what we talked about previously, the relevance of that. But if you're going to put a sharp instrument around someone's dead throat, that isn't like, we doff our caps to you, milady, because you were such a great sickle user in life that we're going to put it around your throat. No, I'm not buying that at all. Bodies that were clearly thought at risk of being vampires have been found with stakes through their heart, beheaded, burned, or with stones in the mouth, Barini said. The fact that the feet were locked in the graves is something well known, not necessarily for vampires, but for all the situations in which we had the fear that the person was coming back. So either way, vampire, ghoul, revenant, werewolf, demon, yeah, we're still loving this, aren't we? Yes, we are. That would appear to be that for that article. But as I say, the other guy at the start, the guy from Liverpool University, what's his name again? Professor Darius Polinsky. Oh no, he's from the Nicolaus Copernicus University. It was the other guy that's from Liverpool John Moores University. Well, they found in the same site, I did have the name of the site and the actual site itself where they found these, and they found quite a few. There's a mass grave and there's these other graves of individuals. Now, we know that Europeans had this Now, that's not a vampire bat. That's a fucking B-52 going over there by the sound of things. We know that they had a definite belief in vampires and lycanthropy and other sort of things. People that lived in the woods were often victimised. You had the witch hunts, the persecutions. Second only to the witch hunts around Europe and North America, and even in Britain as well, was the werewolf hunts, which many hundreds, perhaps thousands, were put to death. Again, the same process was used. They'd be tortured to get a confession out of them, and they would be put to death, and in horrible, horrible ways. all for the good of their soul, you know. So witches, werewolves, and obviously vampires were done the same sort of way. Now, we know that John Landis, the creator of An American Werewolf in London, got the idea for An American Werewolf in London when he was out as an associate director on Kelly's Heroes, a film I've covered a lot on the channel. And while they were in the former Yugoslavia, they were scouting locations, and they reached a crossroads where the local villagers were burying someone headfirst in the crossroads, right at the intersection. And when he inquired, what the hell, and they're performing all rituals over the burial, he's like, what are you doing that for? Well, we're burying him head first so that when he comes back from the dead, he's going to dig out the other way and come out in China. So we can't come back and terrorise us. Like John Landis, this was 1969, and Landis was like, what? So people even now are still believing in this? And he started to think about the undead, and that's how he got on to, okay, I'm going to create a story. So he began writing An American Werewolf in London, and it all stemmed from this particular incident. So we know that even 1969, that people in Yugoslavia were believing this sort of thing. So these are Slavic people, and Serbians and Croats now, but they definitely believe in this. Eastern European superstitions are rife, of course. But folks, they're rife everywhere. Everywhere? Did I have a bit of a lisp? Everywhere. God. If we go back, even before, you know, the 17th century, and obviously the medieval sort of persecutions and all that sort of stuff, we go back to ancient times. I compiled a wee list of vampires and their various names from different countries and continents. So we go back to ancient Hebrew, and in fact the Garden of Eden, the woman that was cast out beforehand because she wouldn't obey Adam was Lilith, and Lilith ended up being a bloodsucker, and that's from a Hebrew legend, right? Then ancient Greece had the Lamia. Now, I know, in Drag Me to Hell from Sam Raimi, we have the gypsy sort of Romanian belief in the Lamia. It's a different kind of thing altogether, but the Lamia exists, or existed, as a vampire in ancient Greece. Medieval Greece, so we're coming a bit further ahead, had the, I'm not sure I can pronounce this, the Vraikolakakis, something like that anyway, which again was another vampire. A lot of these are female. They tend to be female-based creatures, which will, especially in some cases, will attach themselves romantically to their victim and not leave them. So they'll be sucking the blood from them or eating bits of them, but they pledge their love. They're demons, basically. But what I'm going to say to you now is that vampires existed in every culture, every country, in every corner of the globe. For Scotland, you had the Berwick vampire, who apparently, he was a nasty bastard in life, and then when he came back, this is the thing about people who are nasty in real life, they are perceived to be, well, they're going to come back. Why would that belief be there in the first place? Why are you going to believe that someone who was a bastard while they lived is going to come back and be even worse after death? But this guy apparently came back and terrorised Berwick, and with a pack of dogs as well. That's where I'm kind of like, really? Did he really come back with a pack of dogs? But all superstitions, all folklore, all legends have a basis in truth. So maybe there was this guy that was a complete and utter sourpuss. And maybe they did believe he was going to come back. Maybe he kept dogs during life and set the dogs on kids. Hence the legend. Okay, we're going to India, right? The whole cult of Kali, which is a blood cult. The thug cult. People call it the Thuggees. The actual blood ceremonies was called Thuggee, but the followers of Kali were called thugs. And their chosen method of getting victims was to garrote them, strangle them. But they'd be carted off and used in blood ceremonies. And the drinking of blood in the belief in Kali was rife. It was wiped out by the English, the colonials went out there. It was wiped out. And Indiana Jones played a part in that as well, of course. But there are people saying that the cult of Kali still exists in remote regions of India, and I can totally believe that. It's a vast area, and people who are remote are going to cling to the old beliefs. So if you go travelling through the outer regions of India, be careful. Take a whip with you, and a fedora. India also has Rakshasa and the Vetala. And again, these are like female versions, female aggressors who come back from the grave, but might attach to particular male victims. And they also tend to eat babies as well. That seems to be a common thing throughout a lot of these. In Germany, you've got the Alp. And the Alp doesn't just suck blood, it bites nipples off too. From men and women, and from little kids, and probably from dogs and cats. It likes a thing for nipples. That's the Alp. Scandinavian, the Scandinavian Mara, which this is another one which falls in love with its male victim and will not leave its side, or his side, and uses and abuses him until he succumbs, to the malady as well. The Moroni, which is Romanian, which is a genuine shapeshifter, that can assume the forms of bats, wolves, birds, hawks, vultures. It can be anything it wants to be. In Portugal, you get the bruxas, which is again, this is more like a revenant ghoul style thing, which will actually not just suck the blood, it'll eat its victim. A lot of the Russian ones and the Slavic ones tend to just be like ghouls. They will just eat the body, they eat everything. But they've come back from the grave and vampire. In Ireland, you've got red bloodsuckers. Okay. Arabia had the gull or the ghoul, which there's many legends of that, which are, again, revenants that come back from the grave and feast upon the bodies of the dead or anyone else that they can get their hands on. Now, they're not... The thing is, the ghouls aren't necessarily dead people. They can be, supposedly, but they're also people that just want to eat dead bodies and hang about in graveyards. Hang on a minute. I take my dog into the graveyard every day. In fact, I'll be doing that within the next hour or so. What am I, some kind of tartan-clad ghoul? Maybe. Siberia has a legend that a demon vanquished became a windstorm of mosquitoes. And this is possibly the origin story of mosquitoes. It was attacked by the hero in Siberia, who it killed his parents, if I remember rightly, and then he went back to fight it. He learned his warrior skills elsewhere. There's a movie in this somewhere. It's almost like Beowulf, innit? And he goes back and he tracks down this bastard and fights it, beats it, but it keeps coming back. Finally, he manages to lure it into a huge inferno and burns it. But as it burns, it unleashes a cloud into the skies, a cloud of insects, which then swarm and attack people and suck the blood out of them. Mosquitoes, folks. China has a lot. In fact, I really couldn't go into the pantheon of Chinese demons and vampires. I mean, Hammer did their The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, which I've covered extensively on the channel. And you have these ghouls at the summoning of the vampire lords will come out and they'll shamble and hop as an army to attack passers-by and villagers. And but they are vampires. And China has a huge number of vampire folklore myths and different types of vampires. Chinese believe that there's two souls in your body. One's good. They've got different names. One's good, one's bad. When you die, the good soul goes off to whatever. Chinese have many heavens and many hells. It goes off to one of them. but the evil side stays in the body and has the power to reanimate the body. And not only that, if the body has been, say, destroyed for, I don't know, under a rockfall, or it's been dismembered in battle, well, and it's only a skull left, well, this evil spirit inside that, what was that body, has the power to rebuild that body, and then that will come back and it will act out vengeance on whoever, and also attack the innocent in a blood-seeking lust. They're called Chang Shi. Yeah, did that. And there's too many to go into. Japan, again, has way too many. And it's got like the vampire cat, which, again, it's a spirit which has gone into it takes the form of a cat, which will then prey on women and children and suck the blood from these poor victims. And then they've got the traditional vampires as well. Japan has a lot of Chinese and Japanese movies really look into these folkloric legends, and they are quite some stylish vampires. They do, without a doubt. Which is why the likes of Dracula, Hammer's Dracula from 1958 was such a huge hit in Japan, and because they just lap this stuff up. Like Malaysia, they've probably got the most. I think they've got different vampire for every day of the week. You have the Lang Sue, which is a beautiful woman in green with long claws that eats children. Charming. You have the Penangalan, not the pangolin, the pangolin from the Wuhan province. And look at if we're talking about vampires being a metaphor for plague and disease and pandemics, like tuberculosis, like the Black Death, and you've got the Penangalan, very similar to the pangolin, which the Chinese blamed for, that's what brought out COVID-19. Not our biological warfare testing in our labs. No, not that. No, we didn't do it at all. No. Right, yeah. You're going to blame it on a little creature. Blame it on vampires. The Polong. And you've got the Bajang. The Bajang is different because that's created by sorcery. There's a load more which witchcraft is used to to create a vampire or a ghoul or a zombie, I suppose, in many ways. Because this whole thing, vampire, werewolf, ghoul, and revenant, and zombie, they're all cut from the same cloth, aren't they? In a way, except that werewolves really, they're a living monster. They're not from beyond the grave. And yet, of course, as Romania and other Eastern European countries believe, if you're born on Christmas Day, or you're the seventh son of a seventh son and all this kind of stuff, and then when you die, you're going to come back as a werewolf. So, you've got all of these things. But as I said before, myths, legends, folklore have a basis in truth. They do. A lot of it's persecution, of course. Like if you're an old woman or an old man that lives in a gingerbread house in the woods, and you're lonely, so oh, there's some kids, picking berries. Hello, kids, come and say hello. I'll cook you some soup, a nice stew. And then the parents get wind of it. Oh, that's it, witch, warlock, you're for the chopping block and the ducking spool. And again, you got this whole thing of kids going into the woods, fairy tales, Brothers Grimm, which were always warnings, prophetic warnings about don't talk to strangers. And even before paedophilia was a thing, it was known and documented and talked about. It was obviously known about by, you just didn't trust outsiders, people living in the woods who might be luring people in. Of course, the likes of vampires and werewolves and a ravening bloodlust, which could be contagious as well. So a bite will infect someone else. Rabies is the big one. And that's been put forward as an explanation for the whole bloody thing in the first place. And yeah, I can actually see that. But, we love these things, don't we? Vampires, werewolves, ghouls, monsters, zombies, demons. Yes! Pazuzu! Yeah, we love it all. Predators as well. Just realised what t-shirt I'm wearing. But I just thought this is really, really interesting stuff, because you've got now scientists today, archaeologists today, who are looking into bodies that have been buried with specific reasons to keep them from coming back from the grave, showing that even as late as the 17th century, and we know from 1969, as John Landis can testify, that people were still believing it even then, that a nasty person could come back as a monster and terrorize the neighborhood. You're not going to just take that at face value, are you? If you live in the village, folklore, tradition, ritual get, intrinsically indoctrinated into you as a small child. Of course, small closed off communities in the rural areas, you're not going to have much of a way out of it. But people do leave these towns and go and get educated. And you think as time and society and civilization moves on, 2 world wars with technology and real human monsters being revealed, and the depths of depravity that supposedly normal human beings can sink to, the belief in werewolves and vampires really isn't that extraordinary at all, So, but the fact that they're looking into this, I love it, And a padlock round the big toe. How is that going to stop you? A sickle round the neck. I definitely believe that's done not as a symbol of status. That's to keep you pinned down. So you wake up, right, I'm up. Oh shit, But that's also the belief that that the dead who rise up can be killed again. If you've died once and you come back, what's to stop you coming back again and again and again? If you're that kind of ghoul monster, then. But they clearly believed it. Burying them head first, burying them face down. And the quote was in the other story, the other release, which about the little girl, was that you bury them face down, that they bite into the ground and not someone above. So that's a direct quote. Obviously, these guys are studying ritualistic burials, which are unique and unusual, and clearly have a basis in legend. Isn't it fantastic stuff? I love it. I'm going to keep tracking more of this down and try and keep on my toes with this one, and whatever stuff they come out with, I might even enroll at John Moores University, Liverpool, a course in vampirism. But I'll specialise in an offshoot of lycanthropy. Dear God. But yeah, padlocks around the toes. Obviously, they said before, some of them have been staked through the heart as well. Because Stoker did not get that. Stoker did not make that bit up himself. He made up many other versions of, ideas for vampires, how to dispatch them, and the powers that they had. But he didn't create that. That was already sort of in the folklore as well. Or any kind of instrument, a wooden stake, a sword, anything just to pierce the heart. And also in many mythologies, it's to pin them to the ground as well so they can't get up again. This is how people believed. I think the best one is just incinerate the bloody body. If you're that concerned about it, burn the bloody thing. Like the Thing, every living cell is an evil bastard. You're going to destroy the whole thing, consume it all. Oh dear. Well, folks, anyway, I just thought that was interesting, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, whether you like it or not. So, vampires. There's no mistaking it. People did believe in these things. Whether it was just, as this guy said, someone goes crazy, they've got a disease, and maybe rabies. They froth at the mouth, they howl at the moon, they crawl around on all fours, they start foraging in the ground, and they attack other people, and they put a bite on them, which will pass the infection on. And then that person succumbs to it as well. So this could be a great, really primal basis for these legends. And of course, rabies has existed in most continents and most countries as well, so it's been there. Like shape-shifting as well, every country has a version of the werewolf mythology. Like obviously in Africa, you get were-tigers and leopard men and all that kind of stuff. In Europe and in North America, you have also like people that turn into bears. It's whatever animal is there. Just trying to think what the hell you get in the UK. Troutman. There's Rambo up there. Troutman. You know, he could live off the land, to eat things to make a billy go puke. An expert with guns, with knives, with his bare hands and claws. You know, Troutman. But in the UK, way back when Britain was covered with trees, it's an entire forested area. Such a shame that it's almost completely eradicated all the trees and the forests. It covered every scrap of land in the British Isles was tree infested. And but we had wolves and we had bears as well. So yeah, back in the old days, yeah, I can see maybe you had the Scottish werewolf. There's actually many werewolf stories from Britain, and also many vampire stories as well. So we've had the lot, and that's every culture has stories of people that transform into animals and then go and attack other people. Of course, Native Americans, it's not necessarily a nasty thing. It's a state of mind. You know, your mind can change your body. You can be whatever you want to be, and they take medicines and stuff like. And it's a spiritual process. But they believe this. Doesn't mean that you turn into a werewolf and go and start ravaging the countryside and attacking people. Doesn't mean that at all. It's actually a much more peaceful, spiritual thing. But you can see how every culture has these beliefs, be it vampirism or werewolfery or whatever. And every culture believes in spirits and ghosts in whatever capacity. So it didn't just come from nowhere. And no one people, no one race came up with it and then it spread. Every single culture has it throughout history. So, there's a lot more to this, folks. Anyway, I have been always shall be Kilt-Man. Please, in the meantime, in this ever sepulchral and crepuscular in-between time, check those words out. They're great. Please keep it kilted, keep it Celtic, and I'm going to see you all in a graveyard near you. I love werewolves more than vampires, though. I've got to make that clear. Werewolves are where it's at.